Okay, so this deck has actually been very successful, and I am very proud of this deck, this little creation that I have here, because it is not only part of my name being an elemental deck, but it is also a 57% win rate in a pretty high rank 4, pretty much, and I've almost become rank 3 with this deck. And I know that before I start, this deck doesn't have 30 games on it like most of my other guys do, which is what I try to have my minimum be. But honestly, it was pretty hectic. I moved away to college, and I got to Legend on my main account, and that just really I was tuckered out, from Hearthstone a little bit. So I stopped at about 21 games, playing 3 games each day for the 7 days. So here we are with this deck. Basically, the overview of this deck, and for all of you who don't know how these guys work, it goes overview into improvements to the deck into matchups. So without further ado, I'll just jump into the overview. The overview of the deck is you want to play minions every turn, build up a board, and then Bloodlust. And if you get board wiped, you have the Manatide Totem to draw cards and restabilize the board. You have the Primal Fin Totem that can produce minions, so sometimes you can actually hold minions in hand. Like, you don't have to play the Firefly in your hand, because the Primal Fin Totem will produce something for you. Cards like Feral Spirit give you early pressure, which is very nice. Fungal Mancer pumps your little dudes at the beginning of the game, and you have totems. So it's very, very easy to produce a white board, and if you've seen any of my gameplays, you've definitely seen the fact that that can happen, where you can just build up an enormous board. Basically, after that, you want to hope for a Bloodlust, or have at least a spot open for a Flame Tongue Totem, so you can go face or make value trades, and then the pieces fall in, and you can get multiple minions to get the Flame Tongue Totem buff, and then ultimately end up going face after a few value trades if you need to. It has the elemental synergy with the Earth and Might, and that's about it, actually, in terms of elemental synergy. It's just the focus of the deck is kind of tokens, but also like the main thing in the deck is elemental. Looking at the deck now, I realize it's not super focused on elementals. Only about a third of the deck is based on elementals, but obviously some things can change. Speaking of things that can change, upgrades to the deck. The first upgrade, enormous, huge Electro Storm Surge. If you can combo her with a Lightning Storm to clear a terrible board on the other person's side, or combo with a Bloodlust on turn 8, it is so good. It's incredible. Nothing's short of incredible, and I don't really think that there's a better card that you could put in this deck. It's also a 3/3 for 3, which isn't even that bad of a value. Next card is Calamos, which honestly I'd say is a pretty good card to put in, just because you can easily save the Flame Elemental from the Firefly Battle Cry in your hand, and then play it the turn before Calamos, and then play Calamos the next turn. And you could do any number of things with Calamos. You could fill your board and then Bloodlust the next turn, or you could wipe the enemy's board, or you can do some direct damage or heal yourself. Those are the 4 options with Calamos. I don't need to explain what it does, but I kind of just did. And yeah, just a lot of potential synergy there, because Menacing Nimbus gives you elementals, Earth and Might could give you some, Firefly, you could always keep one in your hand. You could probably always get the Calamos proc off. And then the last thing that I thought would be huge is a Sea Giant. Sea Giant is actually huge. I feel like if you put in a Sea Giant instead of, say, I don't know, what could you take out here? Instead of the Lightning Storm, let's say that you decide to fully commit to an aggressive style of play, and you put in a Sea Giant instead of a Lightning Storm. You're sacrificing the flexibility of the Lightning Storm for the just overwhelming power of the Sea Giant. Then you could potentially just be chilling and play that card and take over the game. The only other card that I could see you taking out for it is like an Unbound Elemental or Fireplume Phoenix, because you'd want to play it around 4 mana, so maybe Fireplume Phoenix, but then you would lose some elemental synergy, and I was already thinking about taking out one of each of those things to put in the 2 other elementals anyway, because if you take out anything else, you're going to lose the Bloodlust power. If you take out a Primal Fin Totem, that nerfs the ability to get out the Sea Giant in general. Feral Spirit is the only other thing that I was thinking about taking out for a Sea Giant. So if you were to take anything out, I'd take out one of the Unbound Elementals and or Fireplume Phoenix for the 2 legendary elementals, Electro Storm Surge and Calamos, and then I would put in Sea Giant for maybe Feral Spirit, because the overload from Feral Spirit can actually be kind of difficult sometimes. If you play on turn 3, you can always Totem or Primal Fin or Nimbus or play 2-drop afterwards, but for the most part, it actually can be somewhat annoying. So those are the upgrades I would make to the deck. Other than that, this deck is pretty solid as is and is under 1600 dust, so all around extremely good. Also, another thing that you could put in, I forgot, is the Thunderhead and then the Voltaic Burst. I don't know exactly what you would take out. Maybe you would take out an Unbound Elemental for it, or a Fireplume Phoenix, because that little combo is actually really good, along with the other Overload cards. Like if you put in the Thunderhead for the Fireplume Phoenix, and then you put in the 2 Elemental Legendaries for the Unbound Elemental, I wouldn't put in the Sea Giant because the Overload synergizes with the Thunderhead so well. But yeah, those are the potential cards you could definitely throw in, and I'll put those in the guides in like the description or in the actual like Hearthstone guide. But for now, this is the information they'll be giving. If I think of anything else, I will definitely put it in those guides as well. Overall, the win rates of the deck were not great. Could have been better. But it's fine. Basically, this deck had an overall positive win rate against every single class in the game, except Hunter, Mage, and what I'd assume would be Warrior. You'd think that Druid would actually be a bad matchup because of the Spreading Plague play, but you get enough of a board presence, and if you can get the Bloodlust off early, because you can get it out a turn before the Spreading Plague, you can actually do a lot of damage. Now, obviously, if they get a Wild Growth, and this is probably the one game that I lost, if they get out a Wild Growth, you're in a little bit of a worse situation because then they can get the Spreading Plague before you, assuming they save the coin or are going first. Unless you save the coin so you can Bloodlust and have that extra advantage. But by that point, turn 4, you probably won't have a big enough board or enough damage to actually finish them off. But other than that, the fact that the Druid is slow and has limited, like, hard board removal, your minions tend to stick. And if he doesn't have Spreading Plague on curve, you basically win because you have multiple ways of drawing cards. Well, not multiple. You have the Mana Tide Totem. But if you have Bloodlust, you basically just win. And the Hunter, Spell, Secret Hunter, and even Death Rattle Hunter all counter you. You have the Secret Hunter that has, and Spell Hunter with the secrets that just wreck you. Value with the Wandering Monster, and Board Wipe with the Explosive Trap on all of your 1 and 2 health minions. The Rexar eventually kills you. They can close out the late game with Rexar. Overall, not a good matchup for you at all. It's more of a yikes, I'm playing Hunter. Death Rattle is a little bit better in my opinion. It looks like you have a chance for at least a little bit because your board doesn't get wiped. But if he's able to get the Grizzly out and then cube and then get out like 2 or 3 more Grizzlies, there's nothing you can do. It's a little depressing, but if you can get that combo off, you're kind of screwed. But I only played against 1 Death Rattle Hunter, I think, and they did happen to get that combo off, but it's not like guaranteed. So I would say that Death Rattle is a little bit better for you in that certain matchup. Next one is Mage. I feel like this could do good against Tempo, but I played against 2 big mages that wipe my boards with Dragon Furies on curve, and if they don't have that on curve, you'll probably win. Again, it's the whole same thing as the Druid. You could Bloodlust that turn or get Dragon's Fury that turn, and really it comes down to who has the card and who goes first, and I got unlucky in those 2 certain situations. But honestly, I don't think it's that bad of a matchup. Definitely, I think it's Mage favored because they have the board wipe. They have the responses, and they have multiple of them, so if you're not actually able to close out the game immediately, they can kill you. But I do think that it is a little more even than the 0-2, what looks like a very one-sided matchup. Next one is Paladin. The fact that your board gets pretty wide and a lot of your things have more than 1 health means you can just trade into the odd Paladin's 1/1 minions until you get a giant Bloodlust play, and then you just close out the game. Because you'll be in control at that point. If you can get a Healing Totem, too, you guaranteed win. You can't do anything about that. So that's a very easy matchup, actually. Priest. Priest is hard to read. It could be any number of things, but if it's Death Rattle Priest, you'll probably win because it takes him a while to get the Death Rattles out, and you just close out the game with a Bloodlust play. Nothing really else to say about that matchup other than you hope he doesn't run Duskbreaker and doesn't kill you, because Psychic Scream on turn 7 is too late. So just play a standard aggro game, hit him in the face, very rarely trade unless you absolutely have to, And yeah, Bloodlust. That Rogue beats Rogue for the same reason that even Shaman beat Rogue. This deck is actually very even to, not even, uh, similar to even Shaman, and actually beat an even Shaman. So it fulfills the same role in which it pings other minions and uses its wide board to control the board and be like a form of removal. It's kind of anti-aggro, but like also aggro in itself. Kind of like Odd Paladin and even Shaman. And so because of that, it beats Rogue, at least Miracle Rogue and Odd Rogue. Quest Rogue, if you don't kill them on turn 5 and they don't play the Giggler on turn 5 and just stop you dead in your tracks, you probably win too. But if they have Giggler on turn 5, you're kind of screwed. There's nothing you can do against that. That's just 4 of your minions being stopped immediately. And it's a little sucky, but that's just the way the world works. Next one is Shaman. Like I said, I beat an even Shaman. I lost to a Shudderwock. He had triple Volcano. He discovered one. I don't even remember how, but he did. Did he play the... I don't remember how he did, but he got a third Volcano. Wiped my board for a third time, and then had a Lightning Storm in hand after that. So he wiped my board 4 times, and I couldn't do anything into that, which is why I think that it's a pretty bad matchup for you. But then again, he's not always going to get as lucky and get 3 Volcanoes, so I think that this would require further review. I think it's a little bit actually favored in your favor because he needs to have the cards in response to beat you, and if he doesn't, you win. So, depending on if he conserves his resources correctly and mulligans, it could be in your favor, but if they're a good player, I think it's slightly in favor of the control, Shudderwock, mid-range, or whatever matchup. The next one is Warlock. Because you're so aggressive early, you can actually build up a board and do enough damage to an even Warlock before they get out giant minions, being a Twilight Drake, a Mountain Giant, or a 7/7 Taunt. You just build up enough of a board, and then if you have Bloodlust, you can close it out. Against Zoolock, same thing as Odd Paladin and even Shaman. You build up a board, you control the board with your minions and your endless supply of them because of the Primal Fin Totem, your totems, and just tons of small minions and buffs and little draw card methods. So, really not even a bad matchup for you. The only way you lose this one is if they play Prince Khaliseth, and if they do that, you probably weren't going to win anyway. I'm sorry to say. It's just not the way that the world works. If they play Prince Khaliseth, the amount of tempo they get, especially if it's on turn 2, is basically just GG. Last one is Warrior. I'm going to say it's a bad matchup for you. They gain too much armor and they control the board too well for you to actually do anything, and luckily I played against none of them. Last is the Mulligans. Basically what you want to do is you want to just keep anything that's 1 mana or lower. I mean 2 mana or lower. That's an actual minion. Don't necessarily want to keep Earth and Might. Don't necessarily want to keep Lightning Bolt unless you're going into an aggro matchup where you think you might need it. Say into a Rogue and you're like, oh, if he plays a Vicious Fledgling, I need a response to it or something like that. Unless you feel like you'll need a response, keep only minions that are less than 2 and you'll do just fine. That's basically it. That's it for this entire guide, actually, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed making this deck. I enjoyed playing this deck. It was probably one of my favorite decks to play in a long time. Like, I liked a lot of the decks that I've made so far, but this one really spoke to me, just surprising them with the Bloodlust, but not it being more satisfying than Token Druid, because you're not playing Druid, which everybody sees as a broken class. You're playing Token Shaman. Shaman already not being a super popular class. I mean, I played it only 10% of the time in Europe, so I don't know. It just felt more fulfilling. Maybe because it was Elemental, and that's my name, or maybe it's because the Bloodlust plays more satisfying than Savage Roar. I don't know. The point is, I really enjoyed this deck. I really think you guys will all enjoy the deck as well. It has some definite upgrades that can actually make this deck even better, but functions just perfectly fine as the under 1600 dust deck that it is. So that's all I have to say about this deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. See ya.